श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. So today we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is chapter 1, texts 10 and 11. Text 10. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishmabhirakshitam paryaptam tuidam etesham balam bhimabhirakshitam. 11th one. अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागम् अवस्थिताः भीष्मम् एवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि. So here Duryodhana continues to speak to Dronacharya. So he listed all the great warriors from his side, and now he's saying, "Oh, dear Dronacharya, our strength is aparyaptam, asmakam balam, aparyaptam. It's immeasurable, protected by abhirakshitam, bhishma abhirakshitam, asmakam balam, bhishma abhirakshitam, aparyaptam, immeasurable. But etesham balam, the strength of these Pandavas, etesham balam, protected by Bhima abhirakshitam, to it's paryaptam, it's only limited or measurable. So you see, it's a very interesting because even in the previous verse, he has spoken something that had a different meaning underlying. So because in the previous verse he said, Madanye Madardhe Tyakta Jivitaha. So he said, all these people are ready to give up their life for my sake. But it came out in the sense that they have already given up their life for me. In other words, they're going to get killed and die in the battlefield, all these great people, even though how great they are. So that's the meaning that came out. So similarly, in this verse, very interesting meaning given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So sometimes when you add a prefix to a word, it can either enhance it or it can negate it. Like for example, there is word valuable. When you add a prefix invaluable. Invaluable means it's not invalid. It means the value is so great that we cannot measure it. It intensifies the meaning. Whereas if you have substantial, if you add in, what will happen to it? Insubstantial means it negated the meaning. It's not enough or it's not good. So similarly, this paryaptam can also refer to sufficient or adequate. When you add aparyaptam, it can become either immeasurable or inadequate. Aparyaptam, inadequate. So it has nullified the adequacy. Whereas in the Bhima's case, he is saying paryaptam, that means it's adequate. So even though he wanted to say Bhima's strength is limited, paryaptam, the other way we can take it is Bhima's strength is adequate, or Pandava's strength represented by Bhima. Here, Bhima Abhirakshitam is adequate, whereas even if Bhishma is there in our side, Aparyaptam, it's inadequate. See how in successive verses, Duryodhana spoke in such a way that uh, these words actually were influenced by Mother Saraswati through Duryodhana. The truth has come out. So, in other words, If Krishna is there, then our strength becomes adequate. Paryaptam. It's adequate. If Krishna is not there, then whatever you may have, it becomes inadequate. So, which is typical of the modern day world where people try to acquire so many things, everything without God consciousness. Like Prabhupada mentions, we want Ramarajya because Ramarajya is famous for its peace and prosperity, happiness, to the extent that there was no death for those who didn't want it. So, like that. And but people, they want that kind of Ramarajya, but they don't want Rama. They don't want to keep God in the center. So many times people fall into this illusion that material things will give me happiness. So there was this rich man who, after acquiring many material assets, he was still morose and sad. So somebody said, okay, you go to this sadhu and he will give you a solution how you can become happy. So he went to the sadhu and said, so I have all these assets. I have knowledge, I have wealth, I have great family, education, but I don't have happiness. My heart is always empty. What is the solution? How can I solve this? I want to understand. So the sadhu, instead of giving him an answer, he said, let's go for a drive. So he took him in his whatever vehicle they had, and they were going. So interestingly, the sadhu took him, instead of having a pleasant drive, he took him to out of the city and started going towards a, a desert. And then this man was asking, where are we going? He said, no, if you want to reach a good place, you must cross these obstacles. And he said, okay, let's go. And they kept on going, they kept on going. And this man became very thirsty because it was a desert and quite hot. So this man became very thirsty. Can I get some water? And then the sadhu said, yes, we will definitely stop for water. As you can see here, you see in front of you in some distance, there is a lake and we can get there some water. And he was waiting. And then they were going and the lake is not coming. And then this man again asked, no, I cannot withstand anymore. Can I get water? He again pointed to the lake. "Oh, we are coming closer. Let's have some water there." And then this rich man, by now, he figured out that this is not actually a real lake. This was actually a mirage. It's only a mirage. He said, no, I thought you are a great learned personality. Can't you understand that this is just a mirage? It's just an illusion. There is no water. It just appears like water. Why are we fruitlessly, futilely going here? And then the sadhu said, this is the exact instruction I wanted to tell you. Unless you experience it, it won't stand in your mind. This life is like, this material world is like a desert where there are constant miseries, constant sufferings, to the extent that Krishna certified it as a place of dukkhalayam. Dukkhalayam means a place of miseries. It's a desert. You cannot find the pleasant atmosphere or water. It's a hard work, hard labor, this world, this material life. And these material acquisitions are like these illusory mirages, which promise happiness, but the more we pursue it, the more we become distressed. Sometimes in desert there is a little rain, drops of rain, But the moment it falls on the ground, it evaporates like anything. That means, one great Acharya said, Tatala Saikate Varibindu Sama. In the hot desert sands, what will one drop of water do for mitigating my thirst? So nothing will happen. So, like that. So, in another example, the acharyas give this example just like the fish. The fish's happy state is simple water. If the fish tries to imitate a person enjoying on the beach, wearing sunglasses, having an umbrella and lying down for the sun bath, having all kinds of cocktails, mocktails, or whatever feast he's having, and the fish tries to imitate coming out of the water, the fish cannot imitate or cannot enjoy anything because that's not the constitutional position of the fish. The fish's constitutional position is to be in the water. That's the source of enjoyment for the fish. So, these material acquisitions, material assets, material ambitions are like this the person enjoying and the fish trying to imitate, by which we don't get that enjoyment. So, that begs the question that means, should we be devoid of any ambitions for material things? One may go to the extreme and say, oh, whatever we acquire, whatever we do, whatever occupation we do, ultimately it's going to be, it's like we are fish and that's not going to satisfy us. So why do anything at all? So there was this devotee who was telling his story, how he became a devotee of Krishna. So he was a very rich man. He was a businessman, and but he was also spiritual. So he was reading different books about spirituality. So in one of the books he read, he said, the book was saying, whoever was the author, you should become desireless to find happiness in this world, and you have to meditate. And they were giving some tips on how to meditate. You have to close your eyes and imagine a light or a candle, and all these kinds of things. So he started to do that. So he did that for 2 3 days, and then suddenly one of his managers or whoever he works closely with, he came knocking his door in a hurry, and he opened the door, and he showed him a newspaper clipping where there was a big bid going on for a thing that is very useful for their business. And instantly, without thinking, they all started to work for it and went for the bidding, and they worked, and then they got the bid, and then they were all celebrating. And the next day, and then he realized, oh my God, what I did. I broke my meditation and I went after something, even though I wanted to become desireless. And then again, he started to fall back to his meditation and exercise of desirelessness and all that. So it went on for several days, several weeks, several months. He kept on failing. He would start meditation, but again, something urgent comes up, something exciting comes up. He cannot but go for it. So suddenly one day, he was walking outside and somebody gave him this magazine, which is called Back to Godhead, which is printed by our Hare Krishna movement. Uh, During Prabhupada started, our Acharya started it in 1944, and it's still continuing. So they print articles about Krishna consciousness. So there in one of the articles he read how Krishna consciousness or ultimate spirituality is not about giving up our ambitions or giving up our occupation, but rather doing it and giving the result for Krishna. As Krishna himself says, Mat karma krin mat kar paramo. You do Krishna karma. Krishna is not saying you stop your activities. Bona fide spirituality doesn't mean you become desireless. You make your desires dovetailed with the desires of Krishna. That is what is called spirituality. Kamastu natu kama kamyaya. The karma that we have or the desires we have should be used for satisfying Krishna's desires, not our desires. Then it is real spirituality. So he became very impressed. So he didn't need to stop this businessman. He didn't need to stop artificially his tendency to do business because naturally his occupation was business. He cannot think anything but business. So he pursued his occupation. At the same time, he could make progress in Krishna consciousness because naturally, as spirit souls, we all have tendency to do something. We all have either we are all either interested in business or you know some employment or even being a householder or a housewife or a student or a scientist, philosopher, whoever it is, a handyman, whatever it is. We all have tendency. The spirit soul has the tendency to do something. The spirit soul can never be idle. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrut. Spirit soul can never be idle even for a moment. So you do activity. The spirit soul must do activity, but must engage in a meaningful activity for satisfying Krishna with that activity. So you give that result to Krishna. That is why Srimad Bhagavatam says, Idam hi pumsas tapasas shrutasya va svistasya suktasya cha buddhi dattayoh avichutordah kavibhir nirupito yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. It says, different occupations exist in this world for different kinds of people. And what is the avichyuto ardhaha? Means infallible purpose for all these occupations. Avichyuto ardhaha kavibhir nirupito. The learned transcendentalists have established that the infallible purpose of all our occupations is that yad uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. With that occupation, you glorify Krishna, who is called Uttama Shloka, who is glorified by the verses, transcendental verses. So, the message is that if you can take occupation, continue to do your occupation, but dovetail it for satisfying Krishna, either with that occupation or by the result of that occupation. That is the message of Bhagavad Gita. So, in other words, we can continue to, as I said in the previous class, these material assets are like zeros. You may acquire many of them, but the value will remain zero. But if you place one before it, the value becomes much more because of placing that one. That one is like Krishna. So the other thing to note in this verse is how Duryodhana is consumed by enviousness of Bhima. So he was only using Bhima's name, even though Drushtadimna was the commander in chief. There was Arjuna. Of course, he didn't even mention Krishna's name. He didn't even talk about Yudhishthira, who was the main king, but he was focused only on Bhima. Why? Because he was so envious of Bhima. He knew that only Bhima could kill him. So that means if usually envy is one of the negative characteristics we all have, it's one of the anarthas not to be had, but we all have enviousness. So, but the result, just to think about it for a second, the result of enviousness is that, say, if you are envious of somebody, the result is that you will start to think about that person all the time. And as a result, what will happen? You also become like that person. It's natural. The more you think about that person, the more you become like that person. The very thing that you hate, you become. Is that something that you want to become? So, therefore, enviousness should not be entertained. We should understand that somebody is in a good position because of God's mercy upon them. If God has decided to bestow His mercy, who are we to stop? If we are desiring bad for somebody, that means we are going against God's wish. That's not the character of a devotee. And we don't know what all that person is undergoing, how much struggle he's undergoing, how much misery he has in his life. We are only seeing one aspect and become envious. So I was talking yesterday to one youngster, and she was mentioning how she would get bullied at her school, and people would call her, bullying is a unfortunate reality in this modern world. And so I was sharing with her some aspects how to go about dealing with this. So I told her the very fact that people are talking about you or making comments on you all the time is that people cannot help but understand that you have something in you that they don't have, to the extent that they have to keep talking about you. That means that you are popular. You have to accept that. They don't have something that you have. So the moment any criticism that anybody faces, any comments anybody faces in this world, it means that you have something in you that they don't have. So you should be proud that you are getting recognized by everybody, that they don't have and you have something. So it's actually a good thing. So, but don't become upset by their comments. Like one great tennis player, he was sharing how he became number one. Because whenever he would face a opponent, many times these people start to shout and yell at this player to bring him down morally. And he will look at these people and he'll think, oh, so many people are after me, that I have to be defeated. That means I am something very powerful. And they cannot stand me being powerful. They are focused on me. I have something. And he is mentally adjusted in such a way that their taunts, he is, muting his ear, and he is considering, he's only seeing their lips move, and he is thinking them chanting for him instead of taunting him. So, and then he becomes quite invigorated by that, and then he would perform very well. So, like that. So, that's how one should deal with enviousness. We should not become envious. And if we are being envied upon, we should just ignore and move on without becoming perturbed by that situation. In fact, in Shastra, it is said that the demons who became envious of Krishna, actually, Krishna was so merciful that because of enviousness of Krishna, they kept on thinking about Krishna, like Shishupala, for example, and Krishna delivered Shishupala. Of course, the acharyas say that that's not the right way to think about Krishna. One should think about Krishna favorably. Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. But even if you think about Krishna unfavorably, Krishna consciousness is so nice. Somehow or the other, you come in touch with Krishna, Krishna will deliver you, even if you are a demon. That is how merciful Krishna is. Of course, it doesn't mean that we should become an atheist or become envious of Krishna and so on and so forth. We should become favorably disposed. We should become a devotee of Krishna. Then imagine, even if the demons are delivered by Krishna, what is the position of a devotee of Krishna? So the other thing, in the 11th verse, that it is said here, Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yadha bhagam avastitaha bhishmam evabhirakshantu bhavantah sarva evahi. Now Duryodhana, now he is recognized Bhishma as the protector, but he wants to make sure bhavantah sarva evahi, all of you are also important. So I'm respecting Bhishma doesn't mean that I'm not respecting you. See how tactically Duryodhana is speaking. So all of you have to stay in your strategic points, and without your help, Bhishma Dev cannot do anything. So you see how Duryodhana is a very good politician, a very good manipulator. And we can see that even his speech is thoughtful. We may think that Duryodhana is an impressive character. Oh, he's thinking so much before speaking each word. Yes, that is true, but we have to see that a person's caliber is determined not just by the expertise of the person's speech, but by the purity of the person's motive. So, if the person's motive is not pure, his motive is filled with greed, lust, anger, envy, then how much ever externally he may pose with his speech, with his appearance, then that is, we should take it as such with the motive. So, as the scriptures say, Maninam bhushanam sarpaha kim ashonaha bhayankara. That means a serpent may be decorated by jewels. So, jewel is attractive. Like when a serpent is decorated by jewel, instead of becoming cautious by seeing the serpent, we become attracted by seeing the jewel. And we go towards the jewel closer, and then the serpent will bite. That means the quality or the great qualities like the speech and appearance and all these kind of things, if a person is by nature like the snake, these qualities actually are more dangerous. So that's why sometimes people with demonic propensities have material skills and expertise. We get enamored by that, and we may lower our guard and start appreciating or admiring them, but we become, that serpent will strike with their contamination of godlessness, with their materialistic motives. They'll infect us with their enviousness and greed. That is why it is said that even if a person speaks very nicely, we should not get attracted and hear if that person has no God consciousness. If he's not a devotee, he's not a Krishna conscious, we should not be hearing from such persons. So I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself by *6.
Prabhuji, I have one question.
Yeah.
When you said with the zeros you add one, that is Krishna, can you elaborate that? With the desire, while we live in the materialistic world, while we have to acquire, a secure wealth for children and living and all, how we add that one with Krishna?
Yes. Yes. So it's very simple. We, in this age especially, we make it a habit to always chant the holy name of Krishna. So we recommend you at least start with chanting one mala, which is 108 times. So all the family members, it's a good habit. A family that prays together stays together. So you make it a habit. You sit down at one time, either, I think morning times will be very busy. Evening time, have a dinner together. And after that, or before that, maybe before that, you chant one mala of Hare Krishna. Or, and if possible, and best, to read one shloka from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, maybe for 5 minutes. So this 15 minutes of exercise will bring you closer to Krishna. You're keeping Krishna in the center. And of course, from that, gradually you can improve. You make it a habit to come to temple or start offering whatever you cook to Krishna and partake it as prasadam and offer the result of your work, whatever you're earning, a little bit of it, give as donation to Krishna. So gradually, Krishna will become a part of your life. And as here in this example, the Pandavas never lost anything. In fact, they gained everything by keeping Krishna in the center, even though Krishna didn't give his army to Pandavas. So, materially speaking, they didn't have anything. So, by taking Krishna in your life, eventually you will also become materially happy. But you have to start like this. So, those zeros that you have, then they start to become more valuable by adding Krishna to your life. Does that clarify your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. All right, we'll stop here. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna, Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.